Let's start with the Boston Celtics, who are going to the finals yet again. Second time in 3 years. I don't know how many times that they have been there in their franchise history. Kern can probably help us out, but it's been a lot, and they are back. Howard, what is the biggest difference you see from this team, from the 2022 team? What have you liked from this this postseason from the Boston Celtics? And what do you see going forward, going into the finals? What can we see that's a difference going into the finals for them?
A lot. And the funny thing is that we've spent a lot of time in the last, I don't know how many months, going back to the regular season, parts of these playoffs, where the themes have been, look, not sure I trust them. There's a lot of been, I'm not sure I trust the Celtics. And it's because every time they lose, they lose the way that we've seen them lose in the past, right? Ball sticks, they settle for threes, they don't drive, all that stuff. And for the most part, like, seriously, for the most part, by a massive degree, because how many games have they lost in the playoffs? 2? 3? I've lost. It's like they've barely lost. But we're nitpicking because when they do lose, and sometimes even some of the uglier wins look like shades of their old selves, and it makes people think, am I too confident in this team? Have they not quite convinced me? The fact is they've been absolutely dominant. And we can sit here and say, well, all right, you know, all these teams that were banged up and teams that didn't have to face, players that were injured. That's every postseason, some worse than others. It doesn't matter. They've been dominant and they have shown progress. Jaylen Brown, who just was named Conference Finals MVP by a very slim margin. I think it was 5-4 of the media that were there. Jaylen Brown's been absolutely spectacular in this playoff run. And he's more reliable with the ball in his hands. I think he's smarter in his shot selection. He's just been overall better than he was. It's 2 years ago, but 3 postseasons ago when they went to the finals in 2022. I think Tatum's better, but the biggest difference is obviously like everything else, right? They have Drew Holiday now. They've had Derek White. He had joined them for that in the middle of that season. He's now fully integrated and playing a massive role for them on both ends. And at some point in the finals, possibly even by game 1, I assume we're going to see Kristaps Porzingis, which is a huge difference from a couple of years ago. So, and they're just more experienced. They're steadier. This team, lest anybody forget, has been to 6 conference finals since 2017. Oof. Now, the first one I think was just Jaylen Brown before Tatum was drafted, but 6 conference finals, and 5 of those with this core of Tatum and Brown. So they're just steadier now. You have to kind of grow up in this league sometimes. It doesn't always come together immediately. So I think the doubts that have accumulated over the last several years are probably unfair because it's part of the growth process. No team has been more successful, championships aside, just in terms of consistent postseason success. No one's been to more conference finals in the last 6 years.
Logan, I want you to finish steering the ship, so ask the question you're going to ask. But let me just tag on to what Howard said because I agree with all of it. The one thing I think he left out that is worth mentioning is Mazzulla's better.
Yeah,
like he too is growing up. On the job fell in his lap and had moments last year where you saw the inexperience. But I think he's been better too. I think as much shit as I've given him at times on the pod, it's worth acknowledging that.
How has he been better in your eyes, Raja? Because you were a guy that was like, we have a running bit even from last year. It was one of our hilarious bits of you just talking about him not even calling a timeout. Like just throughout this whole podcast. Like what is this? What is this?
Situationally, he's been better. Like there's a direct correlation for me between the way a team comports itself down the stretch of a game. But there's a direct relationship between the coaching and the coach's ability to manage those situations and their success or lack thereof in those minutes. They have, for whatever it's worth, we killed them at times because they can mismanage situations, but like they've been really clean in the playoffs and they've been in multiple games this series alone where you look at it and you're like, I don't know how they're going to escape from this, but they play very clean. They let you make the mistakes. They just stay the course. Joe last night was great, even with timeouts. This isn't my thought. I think I heard it this morning, but it was a real thing because when it happened, the announcer said it, and I was like, damn, you got Jason Tatum out of the game? Well, he had 5. He took him out. There was a defensive possession. Like, Jason Tatum sat. He already knew the timeout was coming, and so then he was able to get him back on the floor. Like, you didn't see him playing chess like that last year. Like, you saw him stymied by Eric Spoelstra over and over again. And so, I don't want to dive back into that. I just want to give the man his flowers. Like, it's not just that the players have matured and that's why they're handling themselves better in those situations. Obviously, Drew Holiday helps tremendously with all of his experience, and everyone is growing up, but Mazzulla is growing up too.
There was a lot to be happy with. If you're a Boston Celtics fan in Game 4, I think one of the things that I liked was, I think the mark of a really good team is winning games you're really not supposed to win, because there are playoff games out there where the other team has momentum. Pacers had momentum for most of that game. They were up 10, and the Boston Celtics kept fighting. I think my favorite types of games is when the higher seed isn't supposed to win a game and continue to fight, and maybe they lose by 1 or maybe they lose by 2 or whatever, right? But Boston finished the job, and they just hung in there. There were a lot of plays. You mentioned Drew Holiday, Raja, where I think he's in the perfect role right now. I think he's 34, and he's not really expected to be the number 2 option on the team, and he could just focus on defense. There were a lot of plays down the stretch where 2 or 3 of Indiana's guards were trying to get to the cup, and Drew Holiday just snatched the rock, like similar to the way Kawhi would, right? Just like there was nothing. No one was getting past Drew, and he could only focus on that. And then there was the other element. You mentioned the Mazzulla element, where not only is he making strategic calls offensive and defensively, he's also has a lot more. You could see that he has a lot more trust from the guys, where he's telling them, "Hey, man, stay with it. It's going to be okay. It's going to be good." And it seems like they're feeding off of him now.
Well, I was going to say, it's a great point, Logan. That in and of itself is an indication of how he's grown. Their ability as a team for that message to stay fresh in a lot of situations that it would be easy for that message to like get turned off by players. The message being, I know it looks like we're out of this when we're down 18, we're down 20. We have a 5 more games to win this series. Just stick with it. Trust me, we'll get back in that. And we're pros, and guys are conditioned to compete to the last whistle. But there's also an ebb and a flow of like a playoff series, and sometimes you could fall into like, well, shit. We won 2. We'll have 4 more. They're up 20. Let's just, they got this one. And I think that also speaks to Mazzulla as well as the team's maturation, but the fact that those guys stay in there and they just keep working, right? Like that seems like a relatively small thing,
and people don't know how hard it is to sweep. That's why it's hard to sweep in the way. That's why those Game 4s and closeout games are so hard, because you got to go the extra mile, because the Indiana Pacers are playing for their season, right? And they're going to play as hard for their life, and you have to overcome that. And also, you're not only trying to overcome them fighting, you're trying to overcome the mental stretch of it, which is, damn, I'm gonna just give up. We can just go back to Boston and win it there, right? Just you're battling against the team and yourself, and the Celtics have been battling that, which has annoyed me. Have been battling that throughout this postseason. While they've been dominant, they have taken their foot off the gas. It was really impressive to see them just keep it on the gas and sweep a team, right?